Hi everyone, greetings from Romania. My name is Ion-Dănuț LIXANDRU. I'm a PhD student at the Bucharest University of Economic Studies, and today I decided to present you an article that contains a concept almost not used in university marketing, namely marketing modeling. As you can see on the slide, the article written is based on the model of John Howard and Howard-Sheth, published in 1963, but largely unused by organization, either profit or non-profit. As a content, I will present the motivation of the paper and the context from which it started, the role of modeling in university marketing, and the perspective that can be opened with its help. And then I will show you the model I told you about earlier in a detailed way. Finally, I will highlight its testing through a direct study. As I said earlier, I will start with the context and the relevance of the paper, which starts from the current situation of higher education, which is changing with the changes of the needs of the new generation of students. Starting from this dynamism, a series of questions arise, such as, can higher education institutions attract more students in today's competitive environment? Or does university use all the resources and tools necessary to optimize its activities to attract students? Or maybe to what extent can this institution change the decision to choose university courses or product? Well, to answer this question and solve the problem that arises from them, we can use the process of behavioral modeling in university marketing. Kuglan et al. In 2010 attribute the modeling process in marketing to the question how and why, considering that they are the basis for describing customer behavior, segmentation, industry, and competition characteristic, and also consider that analytical models are strategic in that they try to explain certain phenomena, making good decisions and achieving maximum profitability. It can be seen that this effect can attribute to the modeling process in university marketing, but also valuable information can be obtained through modeling. But anyway, research to prove the applicability of modeling in educational organization is very limited. If you think from the perspective of the author mentioned above, the existence of a model to substantiate the decision in a higher education institution, of course, is absolutely necessary. Referring to the previous question, how and why, we can imagine what impact could have the explanation through a model of the purchasing decision-making process or a pricing model, as well as model for establishing promotion budget in the university environment. According to the model discovered by John Howard and Howard-Sheth in 1963, the process of customer thinking from a decision-making perspective are explained. As can be seen in figure number 2, the model contains 4 main blocks with variables such as inputs, manifestation of stimuli, perceptual variables, learning variables, and outputs. These blocks present on the one hand endogenous variables like inputs, perceptual, and learning, exogenous variables, and on the other hand, in the output block, we find behavioral manifestation. Also, apparently a relatively well-organized model and observationally correct, the Howard-Sheth model has little uncertainty about the links between its variables. Farley and Ring in 1970 made a study and showed that the limits of this model are the reduced possibility of operationalizing some variables, and in order to verify its incidence in university marketing, as well as the possibility for it to generate information to help the good substantiation of strategic decision, I conducted research that served to test this model. As can be seen in the figure, the author of this model divides customer into 3 types. Consumer type 1, it's consistent by those who have a lot information and the purchase decision is rated based on a routine behavior. Their decision-making route, marked in red in figure number 1, is a simple one, which does not require much effort. They have a strong predisposition on the brand and have well-defined selection criteria, and the evaluation of alternatives is unlikely. The probability of acquisition is high, and the decision-making process is in the form of intention purchase. The customer type 2 is consisted by those who do not have enough information and other variables intervene in decision-making process. The decision-making route, marked in green in figure number 1, is a bit more complex and has a greater effort for the customer to form their dream attitude in relation to the product or maybe service. The customer in this position must outline his choice criteria and evaluate his alternatives. The probability of acquisition is lower compared to that of type 1 decision maker, and the decision making process is of the form attitude, intention, purchase. Consumer type 3 consists by those who have no information at all, and of course the decision has a number of unknown variables, and the root of the decision marked in purple in figure number 1 has several paths. Here they have not defined any selection criteria or relevant information, and in practice they are in the early stages of decision. The probability of acquisition is lower than the type 2 decision maker, and the decision making process is of the form attention, understanding the brand, attitude, intention, and finally purchase. Knowledge of the decision-making process, the foundation of customer behavior and purchase or purchase intention, is a major factor that can determine the market success of any organization, especially an educational institution. The aim of this research is to test the relevance of the Howard-Sheth model in university marketing, as well as to explain the purchasing decision-making process from its perspective, and to delimit the process underlying the determination of the purchase intention. At the level of the objectives, the present research aims to determine the most important variables in the model for each decision maker category, checking the process direction for each of the types of decision makers given by the model, and verification and measurement of the factor of physical, mental, and social influence. To complete the research, I made a questionnaire starting from the variables of the model that contains 19 questions. The questionnaire was addressed to the respondents in a period of 3 weeks, and I managed to gather 460 respondents. Given the research resources, of course, even if according to the formula for calculating the sample size, the statistically significant number would have been 928. As can be seen in figure number 2, after considering all the variables used in the model, 46 variables, a series of 20 variables was generated showing an association with a decision variable. The figure report in descending order, having as its reference element the chi-square association coefficient, the degree of relation between the variables used as the center of the decision and the strongest influences on it. Following the analysis, it can be noted that the strongest variable is the awareness of the benefit of the university product with a chi-square association coefficient of 63.312, which demonstrates that between the two variables there is a significant difference depending on the final decision chosen to make the purchase, to think, or to try the purchase. To check the association differences of the variable, I did a sensitivity analysis for the first variable. Following the analysis, I found that the degree of association between variables decreases to similar changes in and increases to maximum or minimum changes in the decision-making value. In other words, when all decision makers tend to go in the same direction of the decision, the degree of association decreases, And when there is a distribution of the answers from the decision, the degree of association grows. Consistent with the first research objective, I can say that the most variable with a major influence of the decision are endogenous, and as we can see, we can reject the H1 hypothesis. In order to test hypothesis number 2, I have developed with the help of analysis in SPSS a decision-making tree for all types of decision makers. The analysis contains all 46 variables, which were reduced to a number of 4 variables, which show the highest probability of choice for decision makers types. According to the analysis, a series of 11 nodes were generated, which contains variables with maximum earning probabilities for each type of decision maker. The path of the decision maker type 1 passes through nodes 9, 6, 8, 11, 10, 5, and 4, as can be seen in figure number 3. As shown in figure number 3, the gain for the type 2 decision maker are in the case of node 5, 11, 8, 10, 4, 6, and 9. And finally, the decision maker free profile, which has the lowest purchase probabilities of the product to purchase the product, has gained in nodes 4, 10, 5, 8, 6, and 11. To observe the difference between the types of the decision makers, I have generated a classification that shows the greater possibility of purchasing the university product. As we can see in table number 1, the highest probability of acquisition is next to the type 1 decision maker with a percentage of 64.3, followed by type 2 with 46.1, and of course finally type 3 with 37.3%. According to the above mentioned result, I can confirm hypothesis H2, according to which the probabilities of acquisition are decreasing according to the type of decision makers, as can be seen in table number 1. Consistent with the result obtained in the analysis and with objective number 3, I established the most important factors of physical, mental, and social influence through the individual research, and I noticed that they may differ depending on the sex of decision makers, and the most important factors are the following. For physical factors, the most influence, the best influence is quality of services. For physical factor is distinctive elements, and for social factor is social class. For physical factor, I can consider with the help of the phi coefficient with a value of 0.174 that there is a positive connection of very weak intensity between the two variables. Therefore, we can reject the H3B hypothesis, which claim that there are noticeable differences between the sexes of the respondents, and at the same time we can accept the H3A hypothesis, which predicts that the quality of services as the most factor of physical influence. An extremely important element in choosing a product is the product of competitors, which can have a positive role in our favor, as shown by the analysis that shows that the distinctive differentiating elements are taken into account to a significant extent. Also, here we observe regarding the phi coefficient, which has the value of 0.235, as it shows us that between the variables respondent sex and the level of physical influence, distinctive elements, there is a positive connection but a weak connection. Therefore, we can refute both the H3A and H3B hypotheses, which claim that the most important element of physical influence is price, and that there is a statistically significant difference between the sex of the respondent and the influence exerted on them. The same analysis, as in the other two cases, are used to determine the most important factor of social influence, as can be seen is of course the social class. According to the percentage of influence of 11.2%, calculated in correlation with the variable sex respondent. At the same time, as we can see in table number 4, the Pearson correlation coefficient with a value of minus 0.039 shows us that between the variable social class and sex of respondent, there is a negative correlation, almost non-existent, calculated at the 95% confidence interval, which indicates that the relationship between the two variables is not statistically significant. According to the previously mentioned result, we can refute that hypothesis H5A and H5B, which support that the idea that the family is the most important factor of social influence, and that the fact that there are significant differences at the level of choice between the sexes of the respondent. It goes without saying that the most important aspects of the paper are related to determining the most important influences of purchasing behavior, resulting from the Howard-Sheth model, which demonstrate its applicability in the case of university product. At the same time, the determination of the degree of influence at a percentage level of the acquisition for the most important variables represent a piece, sine qua non component in the current marketing, even more so in the case of university market. What results from the series of findings in the results section is the applicability of the Howard-Sheth model, and the timelines and relevance of this information may demonstrate that it is appropriate to create a set of strategy consistent with the behavior and segments of customer analyzed. It is worth mentioning that as the research results show, focusing on determining the most important influencing factor are subsequently increasing confidence in each of them can lead to exceptional purchasing result. To conclude, I came to the idea that considering one of the most representative node in the decision tree, namely the orientation toward the information society and the context in which the main customer, young customer, are today, I decide to add in the block A a new element, namely the virtual environment, with two sub-elements of particular importance to current customers: the social bubble and information. The first stimulus, the social bubble, can be translated through the group of friends and organization with which customers interact in the virtual environment and who can change their decision. And the second stimulus, information, refers to the notion that are considered relevant by them on the product. That being said, this was my presentation. Thank you for your attention.